Welcome to Complexity Made Simple. My name is Paul Allen, and before we get into today's video, we've got a fantastic announcement about the latest online Yellow Belt course that we've just released. If you go below this video, you will see the link that will take you straight to that Yellow Belt course, and it will also give you access to a 24-hour limited discount offer on the price of this course. This material contains all the techniques that I use 90% of the time with my clients. If you want to start to become a world-class technical problem solver, this isn't just a certificate, this is world-class skills buried in this course, then this is the course for you. We are delivering some of the best skills online anywhere in the world. Click on the link, get the best Yellow Belt course you'll ever see right now. Okay, welcome to the latest video. And in this video newsletter, what we're going to be doing is answering a question that someone has sent me on email about conducting a designed experiment. Now this person happens to be a student. Red, you've sent me a message. You're conducting a 3-factor experiment and you want to know what the best experiment is. We've also had a discussion about sample size. So let's get into this and I'm going to answer the questions that you've put to me. So let's have a look. What's the best approach for a 3-factor DOE? So that's what we're gonna get into. So effectively, what Red's asked me a question. He's got a process, and by the way, it doesn't really matter what the process is. I know what he's up to, the particular machine he's using, but that doesn't really matter. This would apply to any process that's got 3 factors. So factor A, factor B, factor C. He's got 3 inputs and he says, I've got 2 responses. Response 1, response 2. So that's his problem. Now, there's 3 important things that you've got to consider. Okay, and this is really important to some of the questions that you've asked me. So the 3 questions are: what DOE pattern am I going to pick? What design space do I use? In other words, for each one of these, where am I going? Where's my high and low value going to be? And the third one is, and this is a key question that you asked me, is about sample size. What sample size am I going to run? Okay, so we're going to answer these 3 questions. Now, the first one, the DOE pattern. The first thing you said to me was, I'm going to run a 4-run half fraction. You actually use the Taguchi naming function where you called it an L4. And I said, what you doing an L4 for? There's no point. Okay, so let's talk about half fractions. Typically, especially the smaller ones, what do you gain from fractional designs? There's 2 things you gain from a fractional design. So the first thing you gain from a fractional design, of course, is less setups. Okay, so if you did a full factorial on this would be 8 runs if you tested in the high and the low position. So you've halved the setups. So the first question is, do the setups cost me anything? If the setups don't cost you anything, You might have no point doing a half fraction in that case. So do the setups cost you anything? What does it also save? It saves less calculation time. Alright. And this is the primary reason that they exist. So going back to when Taguchi, when he started talking about L4s and L8s and things like that, Taguchi was going to calculate all his models by hand. Calculation time was weeks long. So if he cut the thing down from an L8 on an L8, an 8-run full factorial, into a half fraction, what would he save? Potentially 3 weeks worth of calculation time. Well worth thinking about if that's what you're going to do. What are we going to save? What's that worth today? It's worth about 3 seconds. That's all you're going to save. So the main reason that fractional designs exist has disappeared. There's no reason to do them, because what do? What's the risk with fractional designs? Number one, you give up information. So you can't see if all the interactions, can't evaluate all the interactions in your model. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes in physics, 3-way interactions, 4-way interactions don't really exist. So that's not always a big deal. But in the case of your choice, 8 to 4, what do? And this is the big one. You mix the main effects with the 2-ways, with the 2-way interactions. Now that is a dangerous thing to do, because if you have some positive, strong 2-way interactions and they're traveling in the wrong direction, they have a particular antagonistic effect with your main effects, your model will be awful. It won't tell you how the system works. So what you're trying to create over here simply won't work. Okay, so your DOE pattern, my advice, do the full factorial, simply because I don't think the setups take a long time in your case. It's probably adjusting some dials, so it's very easy to do the changeover. Doesn't save you anything. And this definitely doesn't save you anything, because I know you're going to use a computer, and if you're pressing buttons on a computer, the calculation time takes literally seconds or minutes, depending on how deep you're going. So there's very little benefit to this. There's only risks. Don't take the risk. There's no need. You're not saving anything. Okay, so DOE pattern, I'd be doing the 8-run full factorial. Then there's your design space. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to test, these 8 runs. What are they? They're the 8 corners of a box. Okay, they're the 8 corners of a box, and it's up to you how big this box is. So if you were testing, let's say you went time, temperature, pressure, it's up to you. I can decide 5 seconds to 10 seconds, 70 degrees to 90 degrees, 100 bar to 200 bar. I've picked those. I chose the size of that box. Obviously I could have chose anything. I could have gone 5 to 20, I could have gone 70 to 120, I could have gone 50 to 30 to 50 on the pressure. I'm choosing where the box sits, I'm choosing how big the box is. Now, this is really important. If you choose too small a box, you don't get any signals through your data. If you choose too big a box, maybe you don't produce anything. Maybe the system's turned down so low, there's no energy in the system, it doesn't actually produce a product. So the box is influential. Too small, no signal. Too big, no parts. You've got to understand how big this box is going to be. You want to drive nice big signals through your data, because then we come to this question. So first of all, design space. It's kind of a Goldilocks design space because it wants to be just right. All right, whatever that means, you're going to have to figure that out. You've already done some pre-work, I'm guessing, so maybe you already understand the limitations of your design space, but make sure big, so you send big signals through your data. Now, if you don't send big signals through your data, this thing is going to kick you in the arse. So you've said to me that you don't want to do a sample size. Personally, what I tell my clients, the sample size can't be avoided. So the sample size that the DOE wants you to take is between 30 to 50. That literally can't be avoided. I'm guessing, Red, that during your degree, you've been in a statistics class. And one of the statistics, one of the calcs I hope they got you to flipping work out, was sample size calculations. And if you were paying attention during the sample size calcs, there's a good chance that 30 to 50 was kind of a guideline that came up. It's a law of mathematics. It can't really be avoided. So that's the first thing. Now you want to avoid it. You're saying, I don't think I can afford, I said to you 40 pieces. Now look, what's the smallest I might go down to? If you're going to do an 8 run, let's say you do 3 pieces and therefore you make 24 samples. I think that's as small as I would want to go. All right, so that's my advice to you. I know you don't necessarily want to do that. What's the danger? Let's talk about what the sample size does. If you don't get the sample size right, the maths can't see the signal. Okay, that's your risk. So look, you're going to do setting A, you're going to go setting B on time, 5 and 10. The maths wants to be able to see that shift. You can see, look, that the data overlaps a lot. In order for the maths to be comfortable, another tool that you should have learned, hypothesis testing in your stats class, in order for your maths to be comfortable, it wants a good sample for the blue, it wants a good sample for the black, it wants a good sample for 5 and 10. This would be 12 and 12. It's not the best sample, but it's going to be better than, you're talking about one sample. I think if you take one sample, I don't think you'll see any signals in your DOE. So that would be your risk. All right. Now, this goes to the heart of the previous question, the design space. If you make the design space bigger, so instead of the blue distribution and the black distribution being so close to one another, maybe they're 1,000,000 miles apart. Now, if you take a few samples out of each of those, the maths can clearly see the signal. Now here's the problem. Before you do the DOE, you have no idea what kind of signals you're going to generate. So you don't know if it's going to be massive, you don't know if they're going to be influential but overlapping, so you don't know whether you're going to get this, you don't know whether you're going to get this. But if you make the design space big enough, you'll help to create this. The sample size is less likely to cause you a problem. But what I always say to people, you're working in a university, I'm usually working inside companies that are trying to make money. They are about to do a 50-piece experiment to find out what the next 100,000 parts are going to look like, or indeed how much it's going to cost them to manufacture the next 100,000 parts. And so what I say to them is, this is the cheapest 40 parts you will ever produce, because you are going to learn something to make the next 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 as cheap and as good as they can be. This is cheap money right here. Now, you're in a university. I don't know whether they're charging you. I don't know whether the university's got no money. I don't know the budgetary constraints. Maybe you've got time constraints, because I know what the process is, and these might take time to produce. So maybe there's a time constraint. But my advice would be 24 would be my guess. But you got to take these things into account. To get your design space bigger, maybe this isn't going to cause you a problem. That's a decision that you've got to take with the people that know your process. One last thing that I'm going to say to you is, what's the worst thing that could happen? Right? Let's think of, oh my God, what's going to happen to me if I don't listen to your advice and I don't do this? Here's what could happen. You do the DOE, your signals overlap, and your maths is not happy. What I mean by that is when you look at your p-values, your p-values are all poor, and what that means is you can see no signals. And what the maths is saying is, there isn't a model here for you to use. I haven't got any reasonable signals that I can rely on. Okay. Let's say you did just one replicate. So you went with, I'm going to do one replicate. So instead of doing my 3, you've done your 1. What's the worst thing that happens? The model says, can't see anything. What might that mean? It means you've got to do another replicate. So what you do is, because you've done 8, you do another 8. Do it again. See what you see. Alright, see what you see. Maybe you see some signals. If you start to see your p-values coming low, and therefore the signals are starting to appear, maybe that's a sign. Maybe you do another 8. Maybe you get a model. I don't know. But the risk is you repeat the test. So what's the pain? Instead of doing 8 setups, you'll have done 24 setups. That's the only thing that will happen to you. You'll have done 24 setups. Now, I know the process that you're talking about. You're talking about dials, I think. I don't think the setups are going to be long. So if you've got to come back and collect more data, hey, the DOE is there to teach you something. And one of the things you might learn is the importance of 30 to 50. I say to my clients, this can't be avoided. Whatever you do when you're trying to garner engineering knowledge, 30 to 50 is the minimum that the maths will allow you to go to. Below that, you're guessing. And below that, the maths will agree that you're guessing. In other words, the maths will start to say, I can't see a signal. And it's saying you're guessing. Okay, so there's the advice. Do a 2 to the 3 full factorial. You don't save anything by doing this. Obviously, you've got to think about your sample size. You've got to think about your design space. But the one thing I'm going to tell you is, Red, do this. You're going to learn a bucket load. If you follow your instincts, you're going to learn stuff. If you follow my instincts, you're going to learn stuff. You're probably going to learn more stuff if you follow your instincts, because you'll probably create more issues and more problems for yourself, and therefore you'll go, bloody hell, what I've learned this. So if you end up doing the sample size again, you end up making the design space too small. You'll learn a bucket load about doing DOE. That when you do your second one, your third one, your fourth one, You won't make those mistakes again. By the way, do I have to compromise in my clients with sample size? Yeah. They ask me all the time, oh, we're making gold nuggets, Paul. We can't afford 40 pieces. What's the smallest sample size we can do? And then we go through this conversation. And I've had to do that. I've had to go, I've done two replicates, and I've had to do 2 more. That's happened. It's happened fairly recently. So, you know, it's not perfect. You're trying to get knowledge, but you're trying to get knowledge in a practical situation. You've always got to compromise. DOEs are always compromises. But that's my advice on how to do it. I'll do the full Factorial. I'll spend some time discussing this. Half a day, maybe a few hours, getting this right. And I'd like to get you up to 24, but I appreciate that's a practical thing your end. But Red, wish you well. Hope that's answered your question and give you some food for thought. All the best.